Podcasters Original.
Tervehdys maailmankaikkeus ja tervetuloa, et sä noin voi sanoa, podcastin viinilähetyksen pariin. Vieressäni istuu mies, joka rockvuosinaan tunnettiin ja tunnetaan edelleen Satyricon yhtyeen Satyr-nimellä, mutta itse asiassa kun kaverin nimi on Sigurd Wongraven, jäbällä on siviilipuolellakin niin rockstara-nimi, puhumattakaan laadukkaista tuotteista, että lienee yhden tekevään, millä nimellä häntä kutsutaan. Mestarimiehestä on kysymys. Welcome, Sigurd or Satyr.
Thank you.
Is there a big difference between Sigurd and Satyr?
I'm used to both.
But so you said that you want to make wines for the rest of your life. When did you actually start interesting in wines, and when did it become serious?
So my go-to quote for that was a friend in the wine community once stated in a private conversation that anyone who says that their love for wine started at one particular point with a particular bottle is lying, and I think so too, because it is a gradual process. You don't go from not being interested in wine to drinking a glass of something and then go, oh, now I love wine. It doesn't work like that. The way it works is that you have a string of positive observations and experience over time. And in my particular case, I think my first one was in the late 90s. And then it was just maybe for the next 7-8 years, positive experience here and there, thinking like, wow, this is a whole universe for me to discover. Not just, flavors, but understanding that in the same way as music comes with a lot of culture. Wine comes with a lot of culture. Wine comes with nature as well.
It can be said that you're quite an expert on wines on your own right already. I mean, being that interested in wine for all those years. But when we are talking about your collection, how much is it your own intuition and decision, and how much do you rely on those even with more expertise when you are choosing wines for Wongraven collection?
So a little bit about my background. Where I'm at today, my prime responsibility is to work on crafting these wines here. I am obviously also involved in the administrative side of it, but my main responsibility is related to the production of the wines. I also do some lecturing. Sometimes I lecture for sommelier students. For those who don't know what a sommelier is, it's a wine waiter basically at a restaurant or a hotel. I do sometimes lectures for wine clubs or maybe also some businesses at times, but whatever time allows. But my main focus is working on the production of these wines. Let's say that we own the responsibility ourselves as a company, and I am the one in the company who has to deliver. We have partners in Piedmont in northwest Italy, in Pfalz in Germany, and in the Champagne region in France. And the way it works is the cultivation done in the vineyards, that's done by the vineyard team of that particular winery in the same manner as they would do with grapes designated for their own wines. The vinification, which is what happens with the grapes when they come to the cellar after they harvest. In some cases, it is done in the same way as it would be with that particular winery that I partner with, what they would do with their own wines. In other cases, it could be, let's say we have a wine from Piedmont, a Barolo from the vineyard Monviliero. When our partner there asked me about my thoughts about it, I said, well, before blending, I don't want to use any cultivated yeast for it. I want us to do natural yeast with a spontaneous fermentation. Then the next question is there, enough ambient yeast strains in the old cellar, because they have a new cellar and an old cellar. And the old cellar, you cannot do a natural fermentation in a surgical environment. There has to be yeast in the air, in the roof, in the floor, outside the barrels. There has to be this yeast strains everywhere, not just on the grape skins, right? If you want to have a spontaneous fermentation with natural yeast. So I do that. Why do I want to do that instead of cultivated yeast? So I want to do that because there's this idea, I don't know if it's scientifically proven, but a Barolo from Monvillero, the idea is that it's a wine for long aging. And they say that the wild yeast will start to show its true character and value in terms of complexity in the aromatic spectrum of the wine in a handful of years or so. So that might add something to a wine that has an ambition to be high in complexity, being multi-layered basically, both on the nose and on the palate. Then there's also something to be said for the wine being sort of less uniform in style and slightly more sort of wild. Secondly, there are choices for me to be made. Should we do fining or should we not fine the wine? Should we do a filtration or should we not do a filtration? Should the wine go in new barrels or old barrels? That would be a very dramatic effect, whether go old barrel or new. In our case, we use old barrels because we don't want any sort of influence of coconut or spices or vanilla from a barrel. We use big barrels, so we have less contact surface, and very particular about what kind of barrels we want to use, not just the size. Then at some point, let's say we have 3 barrels, then would be to try and blend what percentage of which barrel gives the right balance. I obviously do the blending myself, so we're not really talking about what kind of input I have. There is no other person there. There's just me. And then the question is, what do we do with the leftovers? Well, maybe we'll take some of the leftovers from a premium wine and use them in a more affordable wine to increase the quality-price ratio in that more affordable wine. And this is my responsibility, and this is why I do this. So I'm sort of exemplifying and taking you through this so that you understand that it's not really about what kind of influence I have. It is about the responsibility that I have.
I bet you didn't come to think of this as a profession back in the day when you started getting interested in wines.
That was something that grew into a monster, today. So when I started, I think it was the 2009 vintage of this wine, and I think we're currently at 2023 now. And the 2009 vintage, the first bottling, I think we bottled about 1,500 bottles. And I was going to the gym and told this story many times, and it's a good story because it was a real, not fear, but concern. I was just parking the car. I got this notification that the bottles had just arrived at the warehouse in Norway, and great. And I thought to myself, what if no one likes this? What's going to happen? Because I can take a few cases and my friends would be interested. But let's say we have 1,200 bottles left. So what am I going to do with 1,200 bottles? And that's a lot of wine, And that was 15 years ago, and I didn't have to worry about it. It was very well received with the wine journalists and the critics, and it sold fast. And today we sell, well, it depends from year to year, but we sell between, so when we count in wine, we don't count bottles, we count liters. And with Wongraven wines, we sell between 1.5 and 2 million liters per year. That's a lot of wine. We have some wines where we produce in quantities as small as a few hundred bottles. We have wines that we produce in quantities of a few 100,000 liters, and we have one wine where we produce in the excess of 1 million liter per year. So it's quite unusual for a wine production company to be like that. Typically, you are very often someone who makes only a series of small production cuvées. So 3,000 of that, 15,000 of that, 6,000 of that, 11,000 of that kind of style. Or you produce, several 100,000 of this and that and so forth. But we're sort of doing both, making these micro cuvées that are usually only in collectors' homes or in, Michelin star restaurants and things like that. Or there are, bag-in-box wines that can be found at basically every wine shop and, duty-free shops at the airports and this and that. And it's an interesting world to maneuver in, because I said it in a text message exchange with a friend of mine last night. We had a review of this bag-in-box, and it was in Norway's biggest newspaper. It was wine of the week or something like that. It was highlighted as like the best buy, and he said, "Oh, that's cool, congratulations," because he sent me a screenshot of the newspaper, and I said to my friend, this is so easy, and I don't understand why isn't everyone doing the same? The way you do this is that you take your affordable wines and you treat them with the same seriousness and respect as with your premium wines. That's all you have to do. There's nothing else. You don't have to put anything in there. You just have to take your affordable wine and then treat it as a luxury product. Give it the same attention from the first step to the finished product. Wine critics will recognize that. They will instantly recognize the difference. So when we're getting wine of the week, wine of the month, it's not because we are geniuses. It's because we take the wines that cost 15 euros and we treat them in the exact same way in terms of respect and attention as with our 100 euro per bottle wines. That's the secret. and also, I mean, the it's not just the content of the bottles and the bags. It's also the visuals. I mean, this already looks like a couple of notches more expensive wine than it actually is. Visuals is how you represent in music your thought patterns and how you would like to be perceived. So with my band Satyricon, in the beginning, we had black metal with loud keyboards and all that.
You were pretty stylish already at the time.
Yeah, maybe. I hope so.
I was listening to all those records back then, and when I first came across you guys, I was like, these guys already look professional. Yeah, it was back in those demo days, and then you guys already had the look.
Thank you for that. What we tried to do is that, as we started doing this and we grew into it, I thought to myself, like, okay, well, this is guitar-driven music. I think it's more elegant to have keyboards ornament the riffs and not sort of replace the riffs. And I thought about making a lot of choices and looking at how many bands were using so much reverb on their vocals. And I thought to myself, these timeless classics from the 70s, they would never do something like that. And that music holds up well today. And I started thinking more about, try to be more stylish, try to be more elegant about what you do, and look at sort of the best bands from the 70s. It sounds great today. You don't have to have these processed, sort of manufactured sounding things. And when you make your visuals, you want your visuals to be an extension of the way you think about your music. I remember when working on the design for the Wongraven Morgenstern Riesling, I had finished my first blend, which was a vintage 2013, and I was sitting in the morning in the courtyard at around 8 o'clock, and it was a beautiful morning, slightly chilly, but a very nice morning. I was sitting, opening a bottle of the blend that I had sort of made a small sample bottle, because sometimes it's good to sort of leave it in the evening, sleep, taste it again fresh in the morning, and then you make your decision whether it's good to go or not. And yeah, and I just smelled it and I tasted it and I looked around and started sort of visualizing how would I wrap this? How does this need to look? Because it needs to look in a way that this smell and taste makes me feel right now. And that is very intuitive for me. I am thinking that whatever is in the glass, the way it looks should be some sort of extension of the way it makes me feel. Maybe the difference between what we do in Wongraven Wines and other companies is, I know that a lot of my sort of, companies run by, let's say, industry professional acquaintances of mine in Norway. I know they can make a label for a wine for the Norwegian market, a French wine made for the Norwegian market. Then they go to an advertising agency and they have a graphic designer make 15 different suggestions. Then they'll have a study group, like a peer group, women, men, certain age groups, and then this is my favorite, I don't like that, and then based on the research, they'll decide the label. That does not exist in Wongraven Wines. It's purely my ideas. I go work with the same visual artists, the same graphic designers as I've been using in music, because they know me and they understand and I have an understanding of who they are. So like this guy, he can be good for this, but he wouldn't be good for that because that's not sort of his universe. And then I juggle back and forth between this personality gallery, and I work with them. And our Swedish importer wanted to change the label of our champagne because some hotel chain wanted to buy several thousand bottles, but not with that label. And I said, that's a shame, because it's a highly respected artist that has done the label. He's a specialist in pointillism drawing, and he has lots of exhibitions, and his art sells at very high prices. If they don't understand it when they see it, they have to buy another champagne. We don't work like that in Wongraven. We don't change the label because some hotel chain wants something different. That's not who we are.
Is it fair to say, if I compare you to other wine men and women, and that they are selling a product and you're selling a vision?
Well, I don't know what others do, but I see everything as I do as an extension of myself. There is no sort of, when I go into the recording studio, when I go to rehearsals, or when I go on stage, I'm not acting. It's me. So that's why you see, even if I'm a black metal artist and I'm in that zone, if between songs I see something which makes me want to smile, I smile. And I don't see it, I cannot smile because I'm a Norwegian black man. I smile when I want to smile, regardless, right? And in the same way, if something infuriates me, I will let that infuriate me, even if I'm at a wine tasting where things are supposed to be more a certain way or whatever, because I don't do like a wine Sigurd Wongraven and a music Sigurd Wongraven. I am Sigurd Wongraven. I try to conduct myself in a respectful manner around other people, but there is no theater version of me. So when you drink a wine from me, I cannot force you to like it. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't. But what you should know is that one of the most important questions as a collector of wine, as a producer of wine, as someone who is highly experienced in wine, you can be sure that the test my wine has run through is my own test of asking myself every single time when I finish a blend, would I happily drink this myself when no one is watching? That's the question. There was a band that knows nothing about beer that visited my band backstage, and they have licensed their band name for the use on a beer. And this particular band, their frontman, I said, can I offer you something to drink? He said, you got some wine? I said, unfortunately today, the promoter filled our refrigerator with beer only, but I have beer. And he said, okay, I'm going to pass. I'm not much of a beer guy. And I thought to myself, I cannot comment on that because... So can you imagine how many times I've been offered to do certain wines? When we sell between 1.5 and 2 million liters per year, I have producers from Portugal, from Spain, from France, from Greece, from America contacting us all the time wanting to do projects. The only ones that we ever respond to would be if they seem interested for wine reasons, not for commercial reasons. If someone is to reach out to me and say like, hey, I have a biodynamically cultivated vineyard in this valley and would talk at length about the soils and why, and maybe refer to having tasted my wines and how we could sort of bring out the best of each other and show that they are about sustainability in the same way that we are in Wongraven Wines, and that they have the right mindset, I would immediately pick up the phone and say like, this sounds interesting. When could I come visit you? But we get offers like that all the time. And that's, I can't work like that. You know, you reach a certain point in your life where the only thing you have is your integrity. And you have to be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm fine with this. I can stand behind this. So that's the way that I work with wine. Everything that I do, I have to feel myself that I enjoy this myself. I'm good with this, and I would love it if other people like it too.
Wongraven wines draws from Piedmont, Pfalz, and Champagne. These regions, are there other wine regions that you would be interested in working if you found a partner, or did you find these as, you know, these are the regions for your palette?
So Burgundy is very difficult because no one has anything to sell in terms of grapes. Everyone's looking to buy. Definitely the cooler parts of California, like Sonoma Coast. I've been following that area since sort of second half of the 2000s, and everything that I thought would happen in terms of the quality increase has happened. And I have the utmost confidence in the culture there and the way people work the lands and their amazing results. And I mean, there's great wine being made everywhere, but sort of what comes to my mind would be Burgundy and Sonoma Coast, but there are many places where you can make amazing wines these days, and it's also changing because of the climate. So places that might have been, you know, amazing in, you know, 20 years ago, maybe they're too warm now, and other places where maybe it was too cold for red grape varieties are now getting warm enough for red grape varieties, and then it remains to be seen if they can produce quality wines based on the soil composition. But I mean, look at the rise of English wine. I mean, no one was talking about English wine 20 years ago, but a lot of people will be talking about English wine for many years now. But yeah.
And climate change, it's obviously affects all agricultural products.
Yeah.
But wine is probably the most high end of those products. So I mean,
it's carrots.
So it's more fragile.
Yeah,
as such.
It is more fragile, and I think some varieties, some grape varieties, are more fragile than others, and some wine styles are more fragile than others. For us, making Barolo, it's a sort of. I wouldn't say it's a constant concern, but it's something that we have to think about. The fact that, when we were making Barolo from the 2006 vintage and 2007, 2008, we're making Barolo with 13.5% alcohol. That's not possible today. That would be having to pick the grapes before they have reached physiological ripeness. The alcohol today is going to be 14.5. So how do we work with that? Well, from a blending point of view, maybe you have to work better on the integration of the alcohol in the smell and in the flavors, right? Maybe grapes from certain vineyards that in the past would be considered a little feeble and maybe not to be robust enough. Maybe today they are the ones that bring in more sort of airiness and lightness that can bring a little bit more of refinement and freshness to a wine with certain alcohol. But I don't spend too much time thinking about these things because hopefully it is reversible, but it will not be reversible in my time.
Yeah. When you enjoy wines in private, is it more like a expedition into the world of wines, or do you have sort of like a certain favorites that you reward yourself with after a hard-working week? How's your own relationship with wines changed since you turned from aficionado into an industrialist?
Well, Darren Malakian from System of a Down, he once said to me that it is surprising how the more successful you get in music, the more you find yourself spending time away from playing music, and that's true. When you're not that successful, all you do is you write songs, you write lyrics, you rehearse, maybe you record, but it's just music. And then as your band keeps growing, there's always like some meeting with the management about, are we going to work with this company, or are we going to work with that company, or should we compare this offer against that offer? And you're talking to, tour manager about like, how about this guitar tech? Well, he was really good on the last shows, but he's not at the same level as he was previously. Maybe someone else would be more right this time around. And you just work constantly on everything else than playing guitar, singing, going on stage, going in the studio. And that's frustrating because you don't dream of those meetings. You dream of just playing, It is somewhat comparable in wine that I wouldn't undo anything from the last 15 years working with Wongraven wines. I absolutely love it. But there are very few magic experiences in wine for me these days. I actually and randomly had one last night, and that was, I actually felt it sitting on the airport express train this morning going to the airport to fly here to Helsinki. I texted in a WhatsApp group that I have with my colleagues at Wongraven Wines. I said that I feel this genuine excitement that I don't feel that often anymore, because we had a tasting of some of our top wines in several vintages. So we did our Barolo Silver in vintage 18, 19, 2020, 2021. Okay. And we did the same with the Barolo Monviliero. And I took some of them back home, went on with my day, took my sons to, football practice, this and that, and then just made a mushroom risotto because that's a good match with the Barolo wine from Piedmont. And then lined up a bunch of glasses and with just some leftovers and took some, let's say, some tasting samples in each of the glass of the different wines and had my mushroom risotto kid sitting there and just trying to see, and then which one of them is going to sit better with the mushroom risotto, and looking at the color, smelling them, tasting, and going, not this one and not this one. And then one of them, it was exactly the same. It was at the office earlier in the day, tasting the wines with my colleague, but with the food, it went through like this complete transformation. It was just like this hybrid merging point where it transcended into becoming a different wine. And I thought, I'll keep a little bit of the sample and taste it without the food afterwards and see if it feels the same. And it didn't. It felt like it did in the office earlier today. And as I texted my colleagues this morning saying, these type of seeing how a top wine completely transforms in combination with food, that's the shit that got me excited when I was 25 and now I'm 49. And I'm not excited about stuff like this anymore because it has happened to me so many times that I've become a little bit numb to it. But this transformation at this level of change and how the wine sort of magically became a completely different wine and a much better wine gave me some of that sort of youthful enthusiasm back. And I thought, fucking hell, I have not had this experience in a very long time. And I really, really enjoyed it. And you need those reminders. You need those reminders when you are working with wine, or when I'm, it's been a kind of experiences like that when, moments here and there at rehearsals with my band, or like a certain section at a concert or recording something where you have these moments where you feel like, oh, I love playing music. I'm so glad that I'm a musician. And you have to hold on to these moments, because the more it becomes your job, the more numb you become. So you cannot sit and expect for someone to come and gift you these moments. You have to look for those moments yourself.
Actually, you do a lot of tastings, but actually it gives you a chance to find those moments and learn new things and new angles. So it's basically people think that you are giving them a tasting, but actually you are giving the tasting to yourself and learning from all the other people around as well.
One of my colleagues that work for me in Wongraven Wines texted me last night, and he's relatively new and fresh in the business, and also 20 years younger than me, and he said, I just want to thank you for the tasting today. It was a unique experience. I learned so much from understanding. I mean, he works in my company. And I said, well, you know what? I feel exactly the same way, because when we do these comparative tastings, you have the same wine, but in different vintages, and you have them all lined up next to each other, a bunch of glasses, a spitting bucket. Like I texted him back, I said, this is when I sort of truly get in depth with our wines, because then I see how it changes with the climatic conditions of every year and with maturation. And maybe, we chose this type of natural cork for this vintage, and then we had another cork supplier for that other vintage. And you start to think, is it the vintage? Is it the maturation? Maybe it's the cork. Maybe we should not have used that cork supplier because it's not where I want it to be. And then that one is amazing. How come that is so much better? Is it just the vintage? Did I do a better job with the blending? Is the cork of better quality? And you start to reflect. And then the thing which is crazy about wine is that you will never get an answer that you can sort of put 2 lines under. It's just there are theories, not answers.
Yeah, and the amount of variables is immense.
It is crazy.
It's just occurs to me that actually wine is pretty much like music. You can do all that you do, but it's only when it's been sort of like when you see the reaction at the receiving end, you realize what you actually have accomplished. So if you need to pair your wines with Satyricon albums, how would that look like?
So the most obvious thing for me, I did an art exhibition making a musical work in relation to the Norwegian artist Edvard Munch. Some people know who Edvard Munch is. For those who don't know, just think about all you have to do is think about the painting Scream, and that's your guy. And what I did in work run from 2018 to 2022, when the exhibition finally opened, was my idea was to make a room where it wouldn't be so the architecture of the room and the painting and the furniture, everything would be sort of a part of the experience. Curate a series of etchings, drawings, oil paintings, lithography, and make a musical work that really has no distinct beginning or end, so it can sort of go on repeat, and then it doesn't matter if you follow it from the beginning or you come in the middle or the end. It is the experience of being in this room and the feeling that the room gives you, and the art, the Edvard Munch art on the walls, and the music. And my idea was that maybe the music could amplify emotions that already are in the paintings and the lithographies and whatnot, and that maybe somehow this would be a different way of experience Edvard Munch's art, and that the 2 pieces together, meaning his visual art and my musical art, would sort of become greater together. That was the idea. And this incredible Norwegian female artist called Anja Garbarek, she said, but this musical work, this was before the exhibition had opened. She said, this musical work, surely you will release this as an album. And I said, I don't know, maybe. I've thought about it, but it's for the exhibition. And she said, well, I haven't seen the exhibition. It's obviously not. It's not open yet. And I absolutely love the musical work. So yeah, I'm sure it will be an even greater experience with the art, but I know nothing about what you're working on. I only know the music, and I love the music. So why not release the music? Because I enjoy it the way it is by itself. And surely I think you can put this music in other contexts and be able to enjoy it. And I said, yeah, that's a good argument. And she was right, because I've been listening to this musical work. It's simply called the same as the exhibition, Satyricon and Munch. And you find it on Spotify, Apple Music. You can buy physical copies of it on vinyl and CD and whatnot. And I've used this musical work for my walks in the forest, driving at night in my car, all kinds of things. And I also find it to be such an ever-changing landscape that it's also very good to just sit down in a dim light environment in a living room in a house with a glass of wine and not really conversing with someone else, just sit there with a glass of wine and enjoy the atmosphere. And I like to enjoy wine with food, but I also like to enjoy wine in a state of contemplation and sometimes with music. But I don't want the music, even if I absolutely love AC/DC with Bon Scott. It's not a wine environment.
It's really not. But I mean, I must say, I mean, I knew about Munch, just that one, the screaming painting.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got to see his retrospective. I think it was in Tate in London.
Yeah.
Say 10 years ago or something. But the thing is that I had never realized how versatile an artist he was. Which brings me to the next question. I mean, did it ever occur to you when you were doing the first demos back in the late 80s, early 90s, that, yeah, right, so once I'm running my wine company and then I'm composing music for Edvard Munch exhibition, I mean, from one of the scariest kids in Norway, you've become a bona fide cultural mover.
Yeah, no, I'm not religious, as you can imagine, but I still like the quote, "God walks in mysterious ways." But you could say that the walk of life occurs in mysterious ways. Maybe that's a non-religious version of the quote. Yeah, and I think one of the things. A person close to me, you know, I'm not saying that because I'm sitting here with a Beatles shirt, but I'm saying it because it occurred to me as an example. She said, Paul McCartney is reaching a certain age, given that fact that, you know, you liked the Beatles since you were a child, you should try to meet him before it's too late, you know? And I said, yeah, no, that's a good point. You're right. And I don't know anyone who knows Paul McCartney. Or actually I do, but I'm not going to ask. So I don't have any direct access to Paul McCartney. But the reason why I did not respond by saying, oh no, that's impossible, how am I supposed to meet Paul McCartney, is because I know how odd life is that way. I know that I once attended some award ceremony in London where Satyricon was to receive an award, and a music business contact of mine said, hey Satyr, would you like to meet Tony Iommi? And for those who don't understand, Tony Iommi is the guy who invented heavy metal music with his songs, his riffs, and he is the mastermind of this whole genre. And I was in the middle of a casual conversation. I said, yeah, I'd love that. But it was a busy environment, and the offer was so surreal to me, because that's like someone saying, hey, would you like to meet God? And you go, yeah, sure, that would be great. And then, you know, half a minute goes by and I feel a tap on my shoulder and it's like, hey, Satyr, say hello to Tony Iommi. And I turned around and he was smiling and he had his leather coat and, you know, the glasses with the blue shade and all that, this violet shade. And I shook his hand and I thought, what? Like this is actually Tony Iommi. And it was very brief, very short. And I don't know him, and I have never met him since. And, you know, but that seemed, if someone would have said that to me, that one day I will have the opportunity to meet and shake hands with Tony Iommi, I said, no, impossible, because life will never take me to a place where that is an option. But it did. And that's why I also could say that, you know, I will probably never get the chance to meet with Paul McCartney. And if not, that's completely fine. But I cannot rule it out either, because life has taken all of these crazy turns. And I feel that when I'm more open and receptive, that's better. And that's why also on the sort of darker side of things, when terrible things happen to people, I feel empathy with them, because I cannot sit here and say that this is their world. It's not my world. You don't know that. Terrible things can happen, you know. you don't go around expecting like your country to be invaded by another country, but it happens. And it happens close to us. And we cannot sit around and say like, oh, that's over there. I mean, that's not humble, you know. You have to understand that. So in the same way that great things can happen, terrible things can happen. And that's sort of both the beauty and the frightening part of being a human being.
And one thing about that Tony Iommi, not only did you get to meet him, he knew your name.
Well, but someone told him.
But he, you know, somebody realized that Tony Iommi needs to shake hands with Satyr of Satyricon in order to stay relevant. But if there was one person, dead or alive, that you would like to have a glass of wine of your own with,
Edvard Munch.
Edvard Munch.
Yeah.
I think he's more like a red man.
Probably so. I can imagine. I mean, Edvard Munch is the obvious one, but think about what is also the cradle of our civilization is the Roman Empire, and there has been many emperors, but one of Julius Caesar's wives, she was. The story is that she was particularly fond of wine, and especially from the I think it would be northeastern Italian grape variety, which is more or less extinct, called Refosco. I don't make any wines from that grape. I think hardly anyone does, but I remember reading about that, thinking this is 20 years ago, that imagine having a glass with Julius Caesar in his life in the room for. So can I have two options? Yeah.
I think that's such a good selection, and the idea of you know, because what I've understood about antique wines of the antiquity, it was, I mean, obviously nowhere near as a sort of like
it's probably horrible.
Yeah. Because basically it's like a, you know, far from homogenic production lines, but also, I mean, for you to get to taste the 50 AD wine, that'll be one adventure as well.
Can imagine.
We've been told that we're gonna see you a lot more here in Finland in the future. So, are you coming here to save our wine culture for the next generations?
So I don't know if it's true or not, but the myth is that this is a sort of hard liquor country. I don't know that to be true or not. There's probably some sales statistics suggesting that spirits is more to the liking. But you know, I've been running this wine production company now for 15 years. And, you know, I tell other adults, it's when they refer to, oh, you know, what people prefer, it's like, be careful about when you say what people prefer. Maybe you should say people your age prefers. Because, for example, for me, I grew up partially on a farm. I think I lived on a farm for about 7 years of my childhood with a mother who was cultivating her own biodynamic vegetable garden that later also worked in an organic food shop. So sustainability, that came with my childhood, that kind of thinking. But when I started with these wines talking about how sustainability was very important for me, people were just like, what are you talking about? It's like as if I was talking about some black magic voodoo stuff, you know? But, you know, I was in my early 30s, I suppose. And people that age, then very few had any interest in that. But look at people at that age group now in countries like Sweden, for example. They are very focused on that. So, you know, when we talk about Finland, is the habits and the culture the same of a 50-year-old or a 25-year-old? Probably not, Is it the same in 2025, approaching 2026, as it was in 2005? Probably not,
Yeah, I would assume that, since the trend seems to be towards, quality over quantity.
Yeah.
And basically, they were pretty good at selling these sort of like artisan beers to the audience.
Yeah.
But that's just sort of like a pale imitation of what wine is really.
Depends, but often, yeah. Artisanal beers are great too, but wine probably has higher complexity aromatically and is more multi-layered, yeah. But yeah.
But so hey, you've been now making wine for 15 years. Where do you see yourself and your company, Wongraven Wines, in say 10, 15 years from this day?
Hopefully we're better. That's sort of what I always aim for with my music, is that we can keep on getting better. There's no point in music or wine where you can say, okay, we've now done it all and there's nothing left for us to achieve. Sometimes I joke about that. I think when, like in the old days, we had the cardboard boxes that the wine bottles are shipped in. They were just neutral white boxes because that was cheaper. Yeah. And then as we started getting more and more recognition for the quality of our wines, I said, I think we can start making cardboard boxes for the shipment of our wine with logo and design and all that. And first time I saw like a wall of pallets with our wine boxes with the logo and the design on the boxes. I just posted it on Instagram and wrote, with a glimpse in the eye, obviously, there's nothing left for me to achieve now. And then the late Michelle Kerr, this legendary PR agent who is unfortunately no longer with us, and she was the PR agent of Satyricon, she wrote in the comment section, "I'm sure you can think of something." I think that's where you are with music and with wine. This you start to realize I started realizing with music, it's just like there's this, you always come back and think whatever song that felt like just perfect, and then you start, well, maybe that section, even if it's fine, maybe if we made it, instead of 4 rounds of this long riff, maybe it should have been just 2 rounds. Maybe that would have made the final section even more sort of conclusive and epic. And then maybe you love the drum arrangements of something, and then you listen back after an involuntary break of something because of a tour, and you listen to it again, and it's like, now maybe it isn't that great. And you start to, so you reflect, and you find yourself in music thinking, there is no perfect song or perfect record, but what you have to do is to embrace the journey, right? And that's the way that I feel with the wine, that there are wines that I feel that, okay, we just really, really nailed it with this one. And then the wine starts to evolve, and it's still great, but maybe the maturation is taking it to a slight left turn that you didn't quite foresee, and you go, I wish it didn't do that. And then you start thinking, next time around, how can we achieve all the things that we liked without the wine evolving in a way that includes something that I'm not a fan of? And maybe I cannot figure it out the next time either, but I'll try. And it's this journey that I like to be on. So that's why there is no end date to Satyricon and my music, there's no end date to Wongraven wines. The only thing that can suggest that it will end is if I find myself as a musician, as a producer of wine, in a situation where I start to think, I'm not really enjoying this anymore. Then it's really time to stop. But as long as you're enjoying it, why should I stop?
Thank you.
Shh. Tässä oli tämänkertainen Itse noin vois sanoa. Lisää jaksoja löydät ihan kaikkialta.
Casters, just listen.